ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. All praise is due to Allah, and as such we should praise Him at all times and seek His help and His forgiveness, for none forgives besides Him. And we should seek refuge in Allah from the evil which is within ourselves and the evil resulting from our deeds. For whomsoever Allah has guided, none can misguide, and whomsoever Allah has allowed to go astray, none can guide. And I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship but Allah, and that Muhammad ﷺ is the last messenger of Allah. This evening's presentation is entitled The Muslim Family in a Non-Muslim Society. One may question whether there is any basic difference between the Muslim family in a Muslim society and in a non-Muslim society. As a family, there is no difference. The Muslim family is the Muslim family wherever it is. However, the non-Muslim society presents particular circumstances which pressure that family, that puts the family in a situation where it cannot call upon the Islamic authority for help. The state, where laws may be implemented to ensure the continuity of the family according to Islamic law, etc. This is the area that is most significant in its difference, that the authority of the state is not there. In the non-Muslim society, the Muslim family has no legal authority that they can turn back to decide for them the rights and the wrongs or the correct path that the families should take. However, in looking at the Muslim family in the non-Muslim society, there are certain basic components that are important for us to understand how that family comes about and how it should function, and furthermore how or on what basis should conflicts which eventually arise be resolved, and also fundamentally how the members of the family should relate to each other, the rights, obligations, etc. To begin with, family in the non-Muslim society has many different meanings. A family in the non-Muslim society could be the result of fornication, common law marriages. It could be the result of artificial insemination. We have gay couples, females, artificially inseminating themselves, having children where it's two females. And you have the gay male families adopting children. However, from the Islamic perspective, all of these methods are illegitimate. The only legitimate method for family in Islam, a Muslim family, is through marriage. This is the basis and only basis. Now, if we are then to look at the process by which that family is created through marriage, we have to step back in time. The partners who are involved in it, in the marriage, the male and the female, their preparation should begin from birth. So to understand how that family should be, how it should come about, one has to look at the children from the point of their birth. That the child, we know according to Islamic law, should be given a good name. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us to choose good names for our children, because we will be called on the day of judgment by our names. So we should not follow methods that have evolved in different Muslim cultures, or we could call them cultures among Muslims, where people may choose names by a number of means which don't fulfill what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said. For example, in some parts of Southeast Asia, Muslims will choose names by opening the Qur'an. With their eyes closed, point their finger, and whatever name that the finger ends on becomes the name of the child. So we find children being called Bismillah. Yes, yes. Muslims, children called Bismillah. Children called Nahl, bee, or Namal, ant, names, these kind of names. So we look at this as not being a legitimate method. It's not the method. If we're going to choose names for the children, we have a choice of either choosing a name that has a good meaning, either in our local language or in Arabic, because it's not a requirement that the child's name be an Arabic name. It's not a requirement. Of course, there's preference given to Arabic because it is the common language of Muslims. But a name with a good meaning, that is one approach to choosing a name. The second is choosing a name which is a name of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He recommended, in the cases, specifically the case of males, that the most beloved name to Allah is Abdullah and Abdul Rahman. And on the basis of that, also, we had some of the female companions, they named their daughters, along with, obviously with the agreement of their husbands, Amatullah and Amatul Rahman. Ama means a female slave. And we also have the choice of names of famous personalities from Islamic history. Some among the Sahaba, the male and female companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we can choose from their names, so that when our children want to know what does that name mean, we're able to give them some lesson in Islamic history, some concept which will make them feel good about their name and make them feel good about Islam. Names which involve shirk are forbidden names. For example, to name oneself Abdul Hussein, this is a common name amongst the Shiites. Abdul Hassan, because of the great emphasis that is placed on the grandchildren of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, they will call themselves Abdul Hussein and Abdul Hassan. This name, of course, is unacceptable Islamically, because it is only permissible to place the name Abd, meaning a slave worshipper of, before one of Allah's names, Abdullah, Abdul Rahman, Abdul Khaliq, Abdul Raziq, etc., etc. So the names that we choose here should be proper names. That is the right of the child. And it is also the right of the child that on the seventh day, along with the naming, that the child here is cut, the value be given charity in gold, its equivalent value in gold be given in charity, and that an animal or two animals, male goat or sheep, be slaughtered for that child, known as the aqiqah. And this aqiqah, though it is not compulsory, it is highly recommended. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because of the fact that his parents were pagan, they didn't raise him with this tradition, he as an adult did aqiqah for himself. He did aqiqah for himself, showing that it is permissible for us, even as adults, if it wasn't done for us as children, to do it for ourselves. but it is part of the rights Prophet Muhammad ﷺ identified as the right of the child. Along with that, for males there is circumcision. For female, in case of female circumcision, it is not strongly recommended as it is in the case of males. And if it is done, it's permissible. If it is done in the case of females, it is supposed to be done on a very limited scale, as Prophet Muhammad ﷺ instructed the woman in Medina who was circumcising the women to do so, by taking only a small, very small portion. In terms of the upbringing of those children, male and female, they have the right to be brought up properly educated as Muslims. This is preparing them for marriage. They should be properly educated as Muslims. We know that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us, Muru abna'akum bis salati li sab'in. Command your children to pray by the age of 7. وَضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا لِعَشْرٍ. And spank them for it by the time they reach 10. وَفَرِّقُوا بَيْنَهُمْ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. And separate them in their beds. It's narrated by Abu Dawood, authentic. It's a basic principle that the children, their education begins with Islamic education. This is what Prophet ﷺ stressed. Though he said, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ, seeking knowledge is compulsory for every Muslim, so education in general, education for this world as well as education for the next world, all included. But what he stressed for children, bringing those children up, he stressed the salah. That by the time they reach the age of 7, they should be praying. Meaning that you don't start at 7, you leave them, but you can start before that. And the children willingly, if they observe prayer in the homes, they will join their parents in prayer. And this is why Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said to the people that the best salah outside of the compulsory salah is in the homes. I mean, today it's not the case. People come to the masjid, they do their sunnah in the masjid. If somebody doesn't do sunnah in the masjid, people are thinking, something wrong here, so and so his deen is shaky. He's only doing the fard. But the fact of the matter is that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to consistently do his sunnah in the home. Consistently. And he also did in the masjid sometimes, not to say it's not permissible, but he favored doing it in the home. Why? And why men, though it is compulsory for them to pray in the masjid if it's within their reach, they're able to get there, they are instructed to pray in their homes so that the environment of prayer is there. The children see not only mother praying, but they see the father praying there in the home. So the concept of prayer takes on special significance to them. So it is important to establish regular prayer within the home. In the case of the man, it should be the voluntary prayers, what we call the sunnah prayers. In the woman, her compulsory prayers, as well as sunnah prayers. Though she may pray in the masjid, in general her prayers will be in the home. So prayer should be established for the child. Also, it was the practice of the Sahaba to encourage the children to fast. Of course, at the age of 7 years old and so on, you can't expect them to fast Ramadan, but they would encourage them to fast one day or a part of a day, and they would offer them gifts and things like this to get them to fast. Whilst they're fasting, they would play with them just to keep their minds away from the food and the drink and so on, and encourage them. So from the earliest stages, they were being encouraged to practice also fasting. In terms of charity, of course, children, they don't have the kind of money to give sadaqah, etc. But still, if you are giving them some kind of allowance, then it's also good to train them, encourage them to share with others. They can share in terms of their toys. They have toys which they're not playing with anymore. You encourage them to give those toys to other kids, their friends, so they can be trained in sadaqah, from childhood. Because of course the child, when you want to give away the toy, you're going to find the reaction, the child doesn't want to give the toy. Even though he hasn't played with it for the last 3-4 years. But it's his toy, It's her toy. That desire to want to possess and to own and not to share with others is a part of the nature. So we have to train that nature to give. So we encourage them to give. And it can be done different ways, not necessarily forcing the child to do, but offering the child something else. You give that, we'll get you something else. Something you want to play with now. That way they get over this heavy attachment to their personal possessions. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has stressed that by the age of 10 they should be establishing the prayer. Although it is not compulsory for them until the age of puberty, but by the age of 10 within the home they should be establishing that prayer. That they've learned how to pray and they're instructed to pray, they go and pray. May not necessarily be 5 times daily prayer, but just that certain prayers, whatever the family has decided that they're going to pray in the home, that they should be regularly doing it. And if not, they should be spanked to insist that they establish that prayer in the home. This should become a part of their lives. And on a philosophical basis, one may question, the concept of forcing people to pray, because there's spanking coming now. You're going to spank this child to pray, and there's a philosophy which is promoted, about not hitting children. It's a philosophy that Western society the non-Muslim society now has lived a number of decades within, where what they call the Dr. Spock generation. Now, Dr. Spock from Star Trek. Right? There's another Dr. Spock. He was an individual back in the 50s, a doctor, who proposed certain theories regarding child rearing. And his theories became widely accepted, and it influences the educational system and child rearing laws, etc., till today. Even though Dr. Spock himself, has gone back on a number of the principles and concepts that he promoted way back in the 50s. Fundamentally his concept was that children should be treated as little adults. You shouldn't hit them, you just reason with them. And it's because of this in the West, to hit a child now, you can be put in jail. The children can be taken away from you if you have hit them. If it's established that you have hit them, you're not allowed to hit them. They have very strict rules concerning it now, especially in America. I know in Canada, I don't know what the situation is here in Bahamas, but they've come into Muslim families and taken away their children for hitting them. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had stressed hitting the children for salah. This is an extension of the Islamic State's compulsion of those who are Muslims to pray. We say there's no compulsion in religion, meaning there's no compulsion to join the religion. This is what it's talking about. Nobody is compelled to join the religion. But in the Islamic State, it is obligatory to establish the prayer. And if a person refuses to pray, expressing apostasy, then the punishment ultimately is execution. If they don't back down, it is execution. So if the state has the right to do that, then as a parent, which is the head of a small state, they have the right also to spank the children to get that salah established. And the whole thing is that ultimately that is for the benefit of the child. It's not an issue of control or power trip that the parents have over the children. This is for the welfare of the children, for the future, that the child has established salah as a fundamental component of their lives. And of course Prophet ﷺ warned, separate them in their beds by the time they're 10. Separate them in their beds. As adults, Prophet ﷺ said, no man should sleep with another man under the same sheet, nor a woman sleep with another woman under the same sheet. And he said, from the time the children, their own same children, reach 10, they should be separated in their beds. Why? Because of the natural desires to experiment, which is natural for children. And experimentation may lead to the development of feelings and leanings which ultimately in this society ends up in homosexuality, lesbianism, etc. It's not to say every time children experiment that's where they will go, but many times when you listen to the people, the homosexuals talk, they're talking about from childhood, the childhood experiences and what they got into as children, and the channels that they went along, which this society encourages. Western permissive society encourages experimentation and, what they call innocent experimentation. But from an Islamic perspective, the roles of the children, male and female, should be developed from early childhood, and their sexual identity should be defined, clearly defined. There should be no obscurity. So the practice, for example, in some places, most Muslims, where they say to protect the children from the evil eye, right? If you have, and this is usually happening with sons, right? If you have a son and he's particularly cute and people are, always trusting and so over him, people get the fear that the evil eye will be put on that child. So what they will do is they will dress the little boy as a girl. Because in these societies, ignorant societies, the girl is looked at as inferior to the boy. They won't make the same fuss about girl as they will the boy. So they'll dress the little boy in girl's clothes, let his hair grow long and all these different types of things. There's a boy. To protect the child from the evil eye. But the danger of that is a confusion in the mind of the child of the sexuals, of who he is. Dangerous. So from an Islamic perspective, this kind of behavior in terms of raising children with these types of practices is not allowed. The child, males and females, should be identified from childhood and raised as such. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had also instructed, as narrated by Nu'man ibn Bashir, اتقوا الله وَاعْدِلُوا بَيْنَ أَوْلَادِكُمْ, that in raising children, fear Allah and be equal with them. Be just with them in terms of your dealings with them. You shouldn't favor some over others. Because this was a particular statement made when a companion reported to Prophet ﷺ that he had given a gift to one of his children. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him whether he gave the other children a similar gift. And he said no. So he told him, fear Allah and be just in giving your children. So this is one of the things also, in raising the children, they should be raised with this sense of fairness. Sense of fairness in terms of how the parents deal with the children. Sense of fairness, of course, we know this is in terms of justice, and in Islamic society how much stress is placed in the Qur'an about being just and etc. etc. You can see clearly that the children who are raised with this kind of a concept and this kind of a desire for fairness, you see, it's much more easy for them to grasp and to understand the Islamic injunctions for justice and righteousness. As Allah says, even if it be against yourself and your families, you should be just, fair. So the children, we said, should be given the best opportunity of Islamic upbringing. They should be clear in terms of their identification of who they are sexually, and from the time they reach puberty and onwards, from an Islamic perspective, marriage is encouraged. Though this society treats marriage below the age of 18 or what, to be considered child marriage. As a matter of fact, there are even some people right now in New Jersey or Philadelphia in the United States who have been put in jail. One brother, he married a girl who was like 13, and he is charged with, child abuse, and the father charged with, abetting, aiding and abetting child abuse of his own child, and they're both in jail now. Court case going on in the state. This is the Western perspective, and of course, when certain Westerners want to attack Islam, this is what they will focus on. They'll go right to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and say, look, this Prophet of yours, he was a child abuser. He married Aisha when she was 9. He was a man in his 50s. Married her when he was 9. She came to live with him when he was 13, but still. Or 11, sorry. 11. Still. For oftentimes when we get confronted, and you need to be prepared for this also. In giving da'wah, if somebody throws that in your face, you should know how to handle this, how to deal with it. Because this is a society which, somebody makes that kind of a statement and you can't deal with it, that just destroys Islam in the eyes of the public. The fact of the matter is that once a child, so-called child, has reached the age of puberty, this is the biological instructions that she is now capable of bearing child. This is God creating the child this way. So that's because she becomes a young woman from the time of puberty. She's capable of bearing a child. In the past, go back 1,400 years, people died, by the age of 30. I mean, you're an old man in your 30s, if you live beyond your 30s, you're really a senior individual. People are dying between the 30s and 40s, as an average. So, children were no longer children in that sense by the time they reached puberty. And we know from the history, Usama ibn Zayd, leading the armies, the age of 16, so much stress, young people involved in jihad along with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in their early teens, 12 and 13 years old, fighting alongside the Prophet ﷺ. So we know that people mature. Earlier, in the earlier times, they matured much more rapidly. And if you go back into the history of America, of Europe, the other countries, you'll find that people are marrying at these ages. It's only now in these times that new laws have been set and maturity ages have been newly set, that this now becomes an issue. And furthermore, when a child is abused, you will see these children are under psychiatric care. When they grow up, they have all these complexes and problems, and they're being dealt with, they're messed up. This is the common result. And when we look at Aisha, who they claim for child abuse is attributed, Aisha was one of the leading scholars of the Muslim world for a time. She taught generations. She narrated the fourth most hadiths of all of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. She's a leading scholar of Islamic law, etc., etc. So, this is not a child who, a woman who has suffered from so-called child abuse. So, the point of the matter is that marriage is encouraged once children reach puberty and growing up, especially where where parents see, a strong inclination towards girls, etc., or girls towards boys, then serious consideration should be given to early marriage. But if there's none, if the boys are busy with boy-type things and the girls busy with girl things or their education or whatever, and they're not inclined that way, and maybe the average child will not be inclined, but you will find some children with that strong attraction from an early age. Those are the ones that one has to take specific care for. And it is the duty of parents to marry them early, where these type of feelings exist. This is for their own protection, to protect them from falling into the sin of fornication and the complications that can come with it. Now, when one is choosing a mate, one has to consider first and foremost the very purpose of marriage itself. Marriage is looked at as being a means for human procreation, as a means of pleasure, as a means of companionship, and as a means of worship. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is reported to have said, when a servant of Allah marries, he has completed half of his religious obligations, and he must fear Allah in order to complete the second half. This is authentically reported by Al-Bayhaqi. This is why we have that phrase, marriage is half the religion, nisfuddin. Half of the religious obligations are fulfilled with marriage. What does this mean? It means that a person who is striving to worship Allah, and the basic purpose of our creation is to worship Allah. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the jinn and mankind except for my worship, as Allah has said. This is the fundamental purpose of human beings, male and female. The institution of marriage should be a vehicle which helps them fulfill that purpose. It should not be something which is making that purpose difficult to be fulfilled, but a means of helping them fulfill that purpose. And where the components of marriage are there, it does fulfill that purpose. Because the human being, for example, to get up in the morning for Salatul Fajr is a struggle. It's a struggle. Struggle against shaitan. If that human being has a wife or a husband, then the two of them struggling, it is easier. If one didn't hear the alarm clock, or if one shut off the alarm clock, the other one heard it and can get that one up, right? So we have that support. So this is the difference between you on your own and having somebody else there to help you. This is where half of those religious obligations now are fulfilled. This is the significance of it. So that means then that for that to manifest itself in marriage, then the choice, the primary choice for marriage should be piety. And as Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, well known to all of you, that women are married for 4 basic reasons. And men are married for 4 basic reasons. He didn't say that, but this is what is understood. When he's speaking, it's a general statement. The women have same kind of reasons for choosing husbands. They're married for their beauty, their wealth, their genealogy, family, tree, status, and their piety. Choose the pious and you will be satisfied. You will be successful. This is the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's recommendation. It doesn't mean that the other 3 factors are negligent, we neglect them, negligible. Meaning that You just choose a pious woman, doesn't matter if you don't like the way she looks. No. Because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, when men were informed them that they were going to get married, he said, did you see them? Did you go and look at them? They said, no. He said, please go and look at them. Go and have a look at them. Similarly, for the woman, though Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, if a man comes to you who is pious, whose religion you are satisfied with, ask the hand of your daughter, and you refuse him, there will be corruption in the land. Meaning that you're refusing him for un-Islamic reasons. You're making other stipulations. Tribalism, money, profession, these type of things. There will be corruption in the land. Why? Because it means that some young men who should be getting married are not getting married. Some young women who should be getting married are not being married. And the desires that they have are going to come out through other illegitimate channels. This is the ultimate, and we see it. Societies, places like in the Gulf, where the process of getting married, is a $250,000 affair. Huge amounts of money to get married. Very expensive. So you find young men don't even think about getting married until after they reach 30. They're working by the time they graduate, they're working for like 10 years, raising that money so they can have, all the necessary components to set up a family. Get through that marriage. But what happens is that when they're delaying marriage to that point, they still have desires. So you find that corruption, this breeds corruption. Young men during that, the late teens all the way up till 30, when you see what's happening in the society to the young men in that, many young men in that, and young women also, in that range, it's no surprise because of this. Alhamdulillah, there are some tribes, for example, in areas of Jeddah and all that, who decided that they would lower the price for marriage, to like the equivalent of about $2,000. That's it. They just agreed, everybody across the tribe, that nobody will be charging any more than this, to promote marriage, because they could see the end result of allowing the marriage prices to, soar. So the principle here then is that piety is a primary factor, but Prophet ﷺ instructs the males and indirectly the females to see the person who they're marrying. They should be pleased with that person, feeling that yes, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, before going ahead in marriage. Though piety is there, see, piety is not enough. It's not enough. For some women, maybe it is, right? Or for some men, maybe it is. But for the average person, it isn't, because relationships go through many changes. And this is why you find in Sahih al-Bukhari that female companion of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who came to him saying, I don't have any complaints about my husband regards to his religion and regards to his maintenance, looking after me. I have no complaints, but I just can't stand him. I can't stand to look at him. When he's walking in a group of men, I find him the most ugly, the most... So he said, I fear for my religion. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said to her, are you willing to give back, or what did he give you in dowry? He said, he gave me a garden. Are you willing to give back this garden, this orchard? She said, I'll give him back 2. He said, no. He said, no, it's okay, just the one, And then he instructed the brother to allow the khula, divorce, to take place. This was the institution of khula, right? This is obviously a situation where she had gotten into this thing where, these arranged marriages. It's an arranged marriage. She had trusted, not really, checked this person out, and that's where she ended up. So to avoid this kind of situation, and remember, this is a female companion of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Right? Remember now, we're talking about human beings, right? So if they could have those kind of difficulties, then, who are we today? So we have to recognize this need. And when we are looking at a situation here now, where the society promotes love marriages, marriage based on love. This is what the non-Muslim society promotes. For those young people growing up in this society, you only marry that person, for the women, when you see him, you see stars. Something has got to, a bell has got to ring somewhere. Bing, this is the one, right? If this doesn't happen, you don't marry him. This is what is promoted, through all the love novels that the kids are reading growing up, and the magazines and television, whatever. Everything is promoting that this has got to be there. But the fact of the matter is, we know historically that this tradition of so-called, love marriage has not proven itself effective. The rate of divorce amongst non-Muslims in the West now, well over 50% of marriages within the first 2 years end in divorce. So this concept of the love marriage, because before that they functioned on the principle of arranged marriages also. Go back 100 years, marriages were arranged, in many cases. So this is not the solution. And of course, with the love marriage concept, they have another factor that is, the factor of, as they call it, trying out the goods before you purchase, right? Which of course, even though it has its own rationale, right, that is sex before marriage, it has not improved the status of marriages in terms of continuity at all. In fact, there's so many cases of people, they've been living together, for years, trying each other out. Then they decide to get married. After 5 years, next year they're divorcing. They were fine when they were not married, because the commitments that are involved in marriage, they're not ready to deal with these things. So, knowing that, it is necessary also to educate our young people that this is not the ideal. Though the people involved should have some knowledge of each other, should be pleased with each other, that this infatuation shouldn't be confused with love. The bells ringing, the stars appearing, this should not be confused with love. This in fact is infatuation, which can wear off very quickly. This is why Prophet ﷺ, had instructed that primary concern should be piety. However, we said beauty, or what is attractive to the individual, has secondary consideration. Prophet ﷺ stressed it. So it has place. And also, family has a place too. It shouldn't be a final criterion, but if parents of that young person are good, upstanding Muslim, practicing in the community, etc., 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 then the likelihood of that child being upstanding, etc., is good. There's no guarantee, but it's good. So looking at the family and its status in society, not the status from the point of view of prestige built on wealth and power, etc., but prestige built on religiosity. Yes, this is a reasonable criterion to look also, to take into account. And considering our situation, where in the non-Muslim society, oftentimes those compatibility is there because Allah has told us in Surah Rum, verse 21, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And among His signs is this, that He created for you mates from among yourselves, that you may live in tranquility with them. And He has put love and mercy between your hearts. Verily, in that are signs for those who reflect. So, the principle, what Allah is saying here, that the mates were created that there be that state of tranquility amongst them. Second, this is a purpose that Allah set in creating the mates for marriage. And Allah says this is amongst His signs, the mercies, the blessings that He has given us. Because had He willed, He could have had us reproduced by asexual reproduction. There's so many other plants and animals in this universe, in our world, that are reproducing by asexual reproduction. There's no need for a male and female relationship, right? So this is a mercy from Allah, that there Allah has put that sense of pleasure in between the male and the female. So the goal there is, as we said, second, or tranquility. And tranquility not merely from the point of view of the feeling that one may attain after fulfilling one's sexual desires, but because this is not a lasting feeling, this comes and it goes, but the feeling of psychological support and compatibility. This is the one where one develops a relationship which is based on, as Allah goes on to say, mawaddatan wa rahma, love and mercy. That there is that love between them, and they are merciful to each other. They are helping each other, making sacrifices for each other. This is the goal in the marriage. So it's very important for us to emphasize these points to the young people as they're growing up, because going into marriage, they should have an understanding of what is supposed to be involved in marriage. And if they're not properly educated, you just put two people together and then let them figure it out for themselves. No, this is not the way. This is not the way. I mean, this is how the animals function. The parents don't educate the children. They just come together and do what comes naturally and however. This is where human beings have the spiritual, psychological side which should be educated. We have knowledge we should pass on. And this can be something very critical in some circumstances, where a mother doesn't explain, because in marriage, of course in Islamic marriage in most cases, the norm would be that both the male and the female are virgins. And if a mother has not explained to her daughter what to expect, the whole situation can be very traumatic, psychologically devastating. Marriage is just crumbling right from that very first night. So it is very important. Parents want to shy away. We don't want to put them in school and get the sex education, which is sometimes very corruptive. Teaching little kids in primary school about sex and these things. This is not useful. It's destructive to the society. But at the same time, as the kids get older, they should become aware, and especially before marriage, that both the male and the female should be given proper education with regards to what they should expect, what is proper and what is good, etc., etc. And this is an area that traditionally families have neglected. Now, the concept or the importance of procreation should not be neglected, because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did say, تَزَوَّجُوا الْوَلُودَ الْوَدُودَ, marry the prolific and loving women. Right? Prolific and loving women. Similarly, for women to marry from what it means now, because how do you know if a woman is prolific, meaning that she has many children? She hasn't been married yet. How do you know? You look into her family. If her family has a tradition of large families, having a lot of kids, etc., this is recommended. Similarly, for the woman, she can look in terms of the man's background, the family background. Does he come from a large family, etc., etc., you know? Because impotence on the part of a man can be a basis for divorce from the side of the woman. So, looking into the family background, there's no guarantee as to what the state of the individual is going to be, but it is among the signs that one is allowed to look at. Now, regarding the functioning of that family, since we said that the basic goal is to aid each other to worship Allah, then we have to recognize that the family has to function within the confines of the Sharia and the instructions of the Sharia. As Allah said in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 36, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا. It is not befitting for a believing man or a believing woman. See, and Allah makes a distinction here. Normally Allah says it's not befitting for the believers, and it's understood male and female, and He will use the masculine term, al-mu'minuna. When Allah separates out mu'min and mu'minatin, right, then He is stressing that this is something which is important to grasp, emphasizing that both men and women have to recognize this point. So He said that it's not befitting for a male believer or a female believer, if Allah and His Messenger have decided, have ordained a particular thing, that there be any choice in the matter. There's no room for choice. And whoever makes a choice, then they have disobeyed Allah and His Messenger. And in doing so, they have strayed far away from the path. Now this has to be the basis for how the male and the female function together. They have to function according to what Allah and His Messenger have ordained. Meaning that Allah and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has ordained a particular structure for the family, which has a system, administrative system. He said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Well-known hadith, verily every one of you is a shepherd, and every one of you is responsible for his flock. The emir is a shepherd over the people, and shall be questioned about his subjects as to how he conducted their affairs. A man is a shepherd over the members of his family, and shall be questioned about them. A woman is a guardian over her household, and shall be questioned as to how she managed the household and brought up the children. A slave is a guardian over the property of his master, and he shall be questioned about it as to how he safeguarded his trust. Verily, every one of you is a shepherd, and every one will be questioned regarding his flock. This is the order of affairs. As there is an emir set over the society, there is a emir set over the family. It is important, especially in the Western context, where the equality of men and women is promoted. That the man is equal to the woman is equal to the man, right down the line. So then when you enter into marriage, no one has the authority over the other. It's a matter of whatever we agree on. And the reality is that no state functions like that. When you have two heads to a state, chaos. Because they're bound to disagree. And when they disagree, there's no one to decide for them. No one to decide what is the right and wrong in the matter. So they split. So you find this is one of the big factors in the breakdown of marriages in the West today. That the authority structure of the family has been completely removed. Whereas from the Islamic perspective, both males and females should be taught that the man is the head of the household. He has a responsibility to looking after that household, first and foremost, the provider. As Allah said also in Surah An-Nisa verse 35, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has given the former more than the latter, and because the former support them from their means. Therefore the righteous women are devoutly obedient and guard in their husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. This is foundational verse of the Qur'an regarding the relationship of the family, within the family now. How do the people relate with each other, husband, wife? This is what Allah has decided. We know that some women may be smarter than some men. Some women may be stronger than some men. You have women now, they have boxing, you have championships, lightweight, heavyweight boxing champions among women. Women, judo and karate, experts. And they could take a number of men and beat them into a pulp. Okay, this is real. But the reality at the same time is that the vast majority of men are in a position over women. They have been put that way biologically. They have been put that way psychologically. They have been put that way intellectually, as a whole. This is Allah's decree. And there is nothing that a person should feel that this is, a negative degradation of women or this. No. Allah has favored, even among men, some men over other men. Allah favored some prophets over other prophets. تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Allah said, those are the prophets, some of whom Allah has favored over others. And Allah is referring to human beings that said the same. So the status, the fact that the whole of human existence involves people with different favors over others. Allah has favored some over others, that no two people are really ultimately equal. This difference is not something that people may be proud of. So a man can say he's proud that he's a man because Allah put him in this position of woman. No, because it is not something which comes from himself. He didn't create this. This is Allah's destiny. As Allah made one person taller than another, another person stronger than another, another person more intelligent than another, this is not something to be proud of. This is why Allah emphasizes that the superiority is with taqwa. because this is something that we earn for ourselves through our own efforts. But what Allah gives us, He gives us with responsibilities. The more Allah gives, the more responsibilities. So when Allah says He's favored the men over the women, right, putting them in that position of strength over women, etc., then they have the responsibility of looking after the women. And Allah specifies that position is also because of them spending from what they earn. They're the ones going out and earning and gaining the necessary sustenance, and it is because of spending. If they're not spending, then they have lowered themselves. If they're not taking that responsibility of maintenance and spending from themselves to take care of the family, then they have lowered themselves from the status that Allah has put them. And this is why, in the case of divorce, males are obliged to continue to maintain the children. Those children are his responsibility. Till they reach the age that they can look after themselves, it is the responsibility of the father, not of the mother, to maintain them. Though Islam may give them to the mother in the early ages or whatever, they may prefer to be with the mother, it is still the responsibility of the father to maintain and look after those children, because of the fact that Allah has put them as a whole in that position over women. So their primary responsibility is that of looking after the women, providing and protecting them. And on the other hand, Allah says regarding the women that those righteous women who marry for the sake of Allah, out of piety, choosing their husbands due to their piety, etc., they were chosen due to their piety. He describes them saying, فَالصَّالِحَاتُ خَانِتَاتٌ, that the righteous women are devoutly obedient. When you put somebody in a position of authority, that authority is meaningless unless those whom they are in authority over are obliged to obey. You see, there's two sides of the coin. You cannot have authority and then the subjects are not obliged to obey. That authority is meaningless. And this is why Prophet ﷺ had said that were it permissible for mankind to prostrate to anyone other than Allah, women would have been ordered to prostrate before their husbands. I know it's a hadith, women's liberation is really hate, but it is authentic hadith reported by Abu Huraira, found in At-Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood. Women are not instructed to prostrate to their parent husbands. The wives are not instructed to. It's not allowed. It's forbidden in Islam. But were it permissible, then that would be the relationship. Prostration not of worship, but of submission. As the king, the powerful kings, when their subjects come before them, they bow down in submission. Submission in the sense of obedience, their submission of their wills too. I mean, and this is obviously, in Islamic context, it is an aspect of worship, a major aspect of worship, submission of the human will to the divine will. So, these two components have to be firmly understood and a part and parcel of the marriage. This is the basic relationship. When the Prophet ﷺ was asked about the woman's rights over the man, he said that you feed her when you get food to eat, that you clothe her when you clothe yourself, that you do not hit her in her face, and you do not curse her, and that you do not avoid her for disciplinary purposes except in bed, but that you feed her and clothe her as you do yourself. This is your responsibility. But on the other hand, Prophet ﷺ said was that you have rights over women, and that they're not allowed to let anyone you dislike into your home. They are obliged to obey you with regards to your home. Though some scholars have said, the opinion of some scholars, that it is not compulsory on women to wash the dishes and the clothes. Some scholars hold this position. Yes. You read the book called Reliance of the Traveler, Shafi'i Fiqh, translated by Nuh Hamim Keller. Do you have a copy here? No? Okay. Anyway, he brings this point out. Of course, some women, they jump at this. Wow, we don't have to wash the dishes and the clothes. This is sadaqah from us. Maybe I don't feel like giving any sadaqah today, so you go to wash the dishes. Well, the fact of the matter is that though one may theoretically say this is not the responsibility in the sense of compulsory duty on the part of the wife, still this is the affair of the household. And if the husband says wash the dishes, wash the clothes, then she's obliged to wash the dishes and the clothes, because Allah said that she's supposed to obey him. So you see, this is not an out. No. She's obliged to obey him. So if he is willing to make a special arrangement in his home, that one day he washes the dishes and the clothes, and another day she washes the dishes and the clothes, alhamdulillah. If he has her out working, where she is helping to provide and maintain the home, then he doesn't have the right now to demand of her the washing of the dishes and the clothes, as he did when he is the one providing everything. If she is an equal provider or partial provider, then he has to now make some concessions in this matter, because his situation is no different from hers. After a hard day's work, they come home, they want to eat, nobody wants to wash the dishes, prepare the food. So some other kind of arrangement has to be made here, if this is his choice in the sense of having her out and work. Right? If she has chosen to work, but there is no need because he is providing sufficiently, then it remains her responsibility to prepare the food, wash the dishes, clothes, etc. And if she wants to get a maid or whatever, it's on her, because she is not obliged to go out and work. This is something she has chosen, she's asked permission, she's been permitted, but not out of necessity. Okay? So that basic relationship, we said then, is one of providing on the part of the husband and obeying on the part of the woman in terms of looking after the home, because this is the primary status of the family, that the woman is in the home and the man is out providing for that home. Now, in the resolution of conflicts which may occur within the home, we go back to the same verse that we mentioned earlier, that whatever Allah has decided regarding the issues has to be the basis by which the conflicts are resolved. As Allah said in the Qur'an, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, take it back to Allah and His Messenger. If you have a difference amongst yourselves, it works on the state situation, it works in the community, and it works within the family. Where there are differences, then they should take it back to the Qur'an and the Sunnah, as understood by the early generation of pious Muslims. So this has to be the basis of resolution, meaning that if a woman sees her husband or disagrees with her husband on a particular issue, and she has evidence from the Qur'an and Sunnah to support her position, then it is for her to present it to him, and it is for him to accept it. If he fears Allah and the last day, then he should not consider the issue an issue of who's going to win. You know, we got a battle on here now, and who is going to win? You know, I don't want to submit because it means now that I'm not a full man because I lost the argument. No. It's about pleasing Allah. It's about pleasing Allah. And this should be the priority. We spoke before about how the love for each other can lead the partners, the husband and wife, into sin. Where a husband's wife likes to dress a particular way, you know, which is not according to Qur'an and Sunnah. Right? Out of his love for her, he may permit her to leave the house in a way which is displeasing to Allah, wearing heavy perfume and things like this, which is forbidden. His love for her may permit him to do that, and this is sinful. She is in sin, and he is in sin also for permitting her to come out of the home like this. Similarly, the wife, out of her love for her husband also, may aid him in sin. He may ask her, when you're buying the groceries, buy me a pack of cigarettes, you know, Benson Hedges or whatever. Now if she knows it's haram, smoking is haram, she knows that, but out of her love for her husband, she buys the Benson Hedges. She has aided him in sin. It was her duty to inform him and to refuse to buy it. In the morning, for Salat al-Fajr, when the wife wakes up and the husband is fast asleep, she shakes him, tries to wake him, he's struggling, he can't get up, later, ba'deen, give me half an hour extra, whatever. She thinks now, well, oh, he was up late working, poor thing, he's tired, let him sleep. Okay. So she lets him sleep till after sunrise. She, in her love for her husband, has aided him in sin. She has aided him in sin because she has not understood the context that her love should be. Her love for him should drive her to want to ensure that he has pleased Allah, that the pleasure of Allah was more important. So she should sprinkle water on him, and there's actually hadith where Prophet ﷺ mentioned about the wives sprinkling water on the husbands. I used to recommend it before. I didn't know about the hadith, but I read it. That's just, a few weeks ago I was reading a particular article and they mentioned it. Sprinkle water on it. I mean, it may be something very annoying, etc., on his part, but it's her duty to get him up. And this is the true expression of love. The other one of letting him sleep is a distorted and mistaken expression. So the criterion in terms of how they deal with each other, in terms of how they resolve the conflicts, it has to be in accordance with the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Now, where conflicts become unresolvable because the issues are not clear from the Qur'an and Sunnah now. It becomes an issue of ijtihad. I mean, really, what do we do? Now, neither really knows what to do. Then, as Allah said, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إن كنتم لا تعلمون. Ask those who know if you don't know. And you have to go to others. This is where in a non-Muslim society the importance of community lies. That community there can help the family resolve its conflicts and keep that family together. Where the community is there, as a backup to help. It may help from a very basic level. In the case where people are living in a particular area, as we proposed in terms of establishing the community here, physical closeness, where a husband might be tempted to beat his wife improperly, and if she screams, the neighbors here, Muslims here, they'll come knocking on the door. So he'll be shy to do this. Some things where the husband may get out of line, he'll be shy to do it because the community is there, and that puts a certain fear. Similarly, in the case of the woman and the children, in terms of how she deals with them, because the rest of the community is looking at her also. This may also help her in terms of her proper behavior with regards to the children and also herself. And this is why people living scattered away in different parts of the island are not together. This promotes the breakdown of family. It promotes the disobedience of Allah, because people in their natures feel comfortable when nobody else has anything to say to them. Nobody else sees them in what they're doing and knows what they're doing, etc. So it's easier to fall into sin, to disobedience. And this is why the stress should always be there on establishing the community. So for the resolution of conflicts which cannot be resolved within the home itself, then it may be taken to a higher authority. Of course, the woman should not, or the man should not start to complain to their friends. The woman complains to the women, my husband's doing this, that, so and so on the other. And of course, she's not complaining to them and them hearing it to try to see how they can resolve it. It's just become gossip. Oh, he's doing this, he's doing that, and it just spreads all over the community. Similarly, the man saying certain things about the woman, ends up like that. If we want to resolve it, then if there is another family, because in non-Muslim society, families now are not extended families. In the Islamic society, what would happen is that the girl would go back to her mother, the young woman, a woman would go back to her mother, inform her mother or father, and they would intervene, or their parents, the parents of the young woman, or the woman, the parents of the man would get together, try to resolve it, find a decision for them, Not having that extended family, then we go to a respected family in the community, and they can be brought into the problem, the discussion, to try to find some common ground. And if it is something which is beyond them, cannot be resolved in this way, then it's necessary to be taken to the authority in the community, the Amir, or the one who the Amir of the community has appointed to handle, such family matters. This is the steps, and we should always be careful in doing these things, because, as I said, we don't want the problems within households to become gossip in the community, which doesn't serve to benefit the situation, but only to create an ugly image of the people involved. And ultimately, in non-Muslim societies, this can spread out of the community into the non-Muslim society, and then further tarnish the image of Muslims in the community. So very important for us to follow proper guidelines. And when we find that there's some difficulty, of course we should not run to the non-Muslim authorities to resolve these conflicts which exist in the community. Family problems should be resolved within the community. The non-Muslim society is not to their advantage. They are not looking out what's best for Muslims. Oftentimes they will exploit the problems within the family to distort the image, to tarnish the image of Muslims in the society as a whole. So we have to be considerate. We have to reflect on the implications of our actions. What we're going to do, take this step or that step, we have to see and look to see where this is going to lead to. What is the end result from it? So, we can then say, in looking at the Muslim family in the non-Muslim society, that we have a responsibility as adults to prepare our children to be the best components possible for families. The Muslim family is the core of the community. The society is built up by families, a series of families working together, etc. If the family falls, if it's corroded, then the society falls. So we have a major responsibility as adults with families to ensure that our children are brought up in such a way that they will be the best husbands and wives possible. Coming together, knowing why they're coming together, what is the purpose of marriage, how that relationship should be, what are the bounds, what are the limits, what are the responsibilities. These should be clear to them. They should be given as much of our experience as possible so that when they come into marriage, they are firmly grounded. We do that in terms of the material world. We try to ensure that they get the best possible education, and so we are very careful about their success in the material world. But then, in this area, marriage, which is an important part of Islam, as Prophet Muhammad said, it's half of the religion, we are neglectful. We're sloppy with it. And we are in fact only hurting our own community. So we need to look at it as seriously and more seriously than we look at preparation of the children in terms of their academic status and survival in the material world. Inshallah, these are the major thoughts that I had in mind. I hope inshallah that the issues are clear, and I'm sure most of this you've heard before. This is basically only a reminder, trying to put it into some kind of structured view. And from here on, I guess we can go into the question and answer period, where we can discuss different aspects of what I've presented as pertains to particular issues that may exist in this particular circumstance here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Cigar smoking is haram. I do not know why it is, because it contains caffeine. If this is the reason, then coffee and tea also should be declared as haram. Please explain.
Regarding smoking as haram, what we can say is that when cigarettes or tobacco first came to the Muslim world, to the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century, after it was brought back to Europe from America, the scholars there looked at the effects of smoking and ruled that it was makruh. This is 500 years ago. They ruled that it was makruh. How did they come to the ruling of makruh? Makruh meaning that it was disliked. If you didn't do it, you were rewarded. If you did it, there was no sin against you. How did they come to that ruling? Because this is not an arbitrary ruling placed on things, according to how people feel. What they ruled, when they looked at the effects of smoking, they saw that it produced bad breath. The smoker's breath is well known. So they went back into the Sharia, the divinely revealed laws from the Qur'an and the Sunnah, to see what was the ruling regarding things which caused bad breath. And there was a clear ruling from Prophet ﷺ in which he said, those who eat raw onions and garlic should not come to our masjids. Stay home. Pray at home. Why? Because in our prayers, when we conclude our prayers, we conclude saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, to each other. Of course, it becomes very difficult chewing garlic and raw onions, it's very uncomfortable. This is the nature of our prayer. So, to prevent the harm that would come from it, Prophet ﷺ said, stay and pray at home. Right? You still pray, but you pray at home. Meaning that the 25 to 27 additional blessings that you would get from praying in the masjid, you are missing. Right? So anything which would stop you from getting these additional blessings, then it was ruled as makruh, because it is stopping you from gaining these benefits. Right? However, in 1980, the Surgeon General of the United States, after some 25 years of research into the effects of tobacco and nicotine, not caffeine, but nicotine, they concluded, without any shadows of doubt, that tobacco smoking causes cancer. And cancer, we know, causes death. So scholars from that point onward had now to look at the effects and find another ruling, because the original ruling was based on the effect being bad breath. Now we have another situation where the effect is death. So back into the Sharia, we find in the Qur'an, Allah says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, don't kill yourselves. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ, don't throw yourselves into destruction. We find in the Sunnah, Prophet ﷺ saying, لَا ضَرَرَ وَلَا ضِرَارَ, you should neither harm yourselves nor harm others. And we find also in the Sunnah, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ saying that whoever kills himself will find himself in the hellfire, killing himself in the same way perpetually. So, on the basis of that, the ruling by a number of scholars who looked at this again became haram, forbidden. Is that clear? Inshallah.
Any scholar can declare that this is haram and this is halal? It is up to him?
Yes. We're not saying again, it's not an issue of whim, personal preference. The declaration has to be based on precedents in the Qur'an and the Sunnah. I mean, this is principle of qiyas, where you take a ruling from the Sharia and you apply it to your new situation. This is something done by the Sahaba, something done by the scholars all along. This is what you find in the fiqh of Abu Hanifa, of Malik ibn Anas, of Imam Shafi'i and Ahmad ibn Hanbal. This is their fiqh. They are making rulings that this is haram based on the precedents found in the Qur'an and the Sunnah. So it's not an arbitrary ruling. It is an issue of fiqh, right? It's an issue of fiqh.
Haram, the word haram means one cannot touch. Haram,
Haram means if you do it, it is a sin. If you don't do it, you are rewarded.
If any Muslim eats pork, it's not a sin.
If a Muslim eats pork, it's a sin. It's haram, yes.
It's haram, because pork is haram. So if you say that cigar is also haram, that means a Muslim should not smoke. Right?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
If he smokes, he is committing a sin.
Yes, that's exactly what the scholars are saying. that smoking is a sin. It is haram, it's a sin. Why? Because you are taking a substance which you know can kill you. And that is an act of suicide. If I take poison